Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. So, really quick, I just want to state that from this point forward, I've decided I'm not going to limit the subject of my content output to just Star Wars. Don't get me wrong, I still love Star Wars. However, I'm interested in a myriad of topics beyond just Star Wars, so I started finding it a bit difficult to maintain motivation to continue putting out consistent content when I was just focusing on Star Wars as a subject. As such, I'm basically going to start creating content pertaining to any topic I find interesting at that particular moment. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about 3 serial killer ghost stories which have persisted over time. To be clear, I'm not sharing these stories with the intent of endorsing them as real events, nor am I implying that they didn't happen. Belief/disbelief in the supernatural is a very personal position for a lot of people, and I have no desire to step on anybody's toes here. I'm simply going to articulate these events as they're purported to have happened. Their implications are something I'll leave up to personal interpretation. Additionally, I'm not going to go into details about these killers' crimes, as they are quite gruesome and not what I wish to be the focus of this video. There are more than enough videos on here already which discuss these details at length, so if you want to learn more about these killers' crimes, you'll have to do your own independent research about them. Ghost story number 1 on today's list is reported to have happened at the Florida State Prison. Ted Bundy, born Theodore Robert Cowell, is perhaps the most infamous serial killer to ever exist. Born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, Ted was told that his mother was actually his sister throughout his childhood. After finding out the truth for himself around the age of 20, he developed an intense hatred of women, which culminated in him being found responsible for at least 36 murders, though some believe the actual number to be far higher, possibly as high as 100 or more. By using his good looks, intelligence, and manipulative charm to quickly gain the trust of these young women, he was able to carve a gruesome path of murders through a multitude of states, such as Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. After being imprisoned in Colorado on kidnapping charges, he staged 2 successful breakouts, the second of which allowed him to get out of the state of Colorado before anybody realized he was gone. Ultimately, he ended up in the state of Florida, where he spent nearly 2 months on the lam before being caught. Unfortunately, he was not caught before committing several more murders in the state of Florida, including the infamous Chi Omega sorority murders. So after a highly publicized trial, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by electric chair. He spent 10 years on death row, and after countless highly manipulative formal and informal appeals, he was put to death on January 24, 1989, at the age of 42. However, in the eyes of some, his story does not end there. The electric chair used to execute Bundy, known colloquially as Old Sparky, resides in a very grim, spooky-looking room at the Florida State Prison known as the Execution Chamber. As such, not wanting to enter it alone was arguably a justified position even prior to Bundy's execution. However, in 2001, a former prison guard spoke to a Tampa newspaper under condition of anonymity about some unnerving experiences he, along with some coworkers, experienced while entering this room not long after Bundy's execution took place. According to this guard, upon entering this room soon after the execution, he sighted Bundy sitting casually in the electric chair. This time, however, he was not strapped to the chair. As he put it, Bundy had on him a very knowing smile, as if he knew something everybody else didn't. Several other guards also saw him in there, and when they would attempt to speak to Bundy, he would just disappear. Another set of sightings reported seeing Bundy in the holding cell where he was kept right before his execution. This time, Bundy spoke to them, saying, "Well, I beat all of you now, didn't I?" This statement has been interpreted differently by different people, but my personal perception is that the phrase, "I beat all of you," implies that even though they had killed him, he's still there among them, still able to terrorize them, and he knows that this time they can't stop him. Regardless, the sightings got to be numerous enough that eventually no guards employed at this prison were willing to enter the execution chamber alone. It was even reported that the then warden even pulled aside each staff member individually and warned them not to say anything of this to the public under threat of termination. I don't know about you, but even as somebody who doesn't personally hold any strong belief in the existence of the supernatural, this particular story gives me the creeps when I think about it. The second serial killer story I want to share also involves Ted Bundy. The experiences reported here take place in Bundy's former childhood home in Tacoma, Washington. Back in 2017, a story came out about the experiences of a contractor who was hired to remodel a home formerly inhabited by the Bundy family. Bear in mind that initially, neither the contractor nor his 11-year-old daughter, whom he sometimes brought along while working on the home, was aware that Ted Bundy had once inhabited it. As it was put by Minnie Von Burke of the Daily News, eerie and unexpected things started happening inside the 4-bedroom home after he started working on it. His 11-year-old daughter even began refusing to enter the home, sensing a certain malevolent presence and tearfully stating that she, quote-unquote, felt weird. Apparently, his daughter's feelings were justified, as he explains that not long into the job, strange things began happening. Working cell phones would die, heavy furniture would inexplicably topple over, cabinet doors would fly open. Worst of all, one day he noticed the words, "Help me," written on a glass window. According to him, a screwed-on screen protector would have made it impossible for somebody outside of the house to have written these words. Eventually, the man invited 2 pastors to come by the house and bless the property. These pastors also advised the contractor to write Bible verses on the walls. I cannot speak to whether or not this man completed his contracting job, but I have to say I wouldn't blame him a bit if he reneged on the contract. The final serial killer ghost story I want to share involves Jeffrey Dahmer. Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 21, 1960, Jeffrey grew up in a decidedly broken home, with his parents' marriage being a highly tempestuous, dysfunctional relationship, which naturally meant he witnessed a great deal of fighting between them. By his teen years, Jeffrey was perpetually afflicted with inner turmoil. Not only did he find it extremely difficult to relate to his peers, but he also had come to the realization that he was gay, and he knew that his father would reject him if he were to find out the truth about his son's sexual orientation. However, being gay was perhaps the least troubling aspect of Jeffrey's sexuality, as during puberty, he began developing extremely troublesome fantasies involving violence and having total control over a person. Being unable to share any of these troublesome fantasies with anybody magnified his already crushing feelings of isolation, and so he began heavily abusing alcohol out of desperation to anesthetize these feelings. Well, as it usually turns out with addictions, this was just throwing gasoline onto a fire. As he matured into an adult, his fantasies grew to be nearly incomprehensibly dark and disturbed, and they ultimately led him down an unimaginably dark path wherein he is confirmed to have killed 17 young men, along with committing some of the most gruesome, atrocious acts imaginable, acts which I won't go into detail about here. He was eventually caught and sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences, and on November 28, 1994, he was beaten to death by a fellow inmate who decided he had had enough of Jeffrey's commentary about his crimes. Years after these events transpired, the hit movie My Friend Dahmer was shot and released. Much of the filming actually took place in the real-life childhood home of Jeffrey Dahmer in Akron, Ohio. Jeffrey's first murder at the age of 18 occurred within the walls of this very house. The actor, Ross Lynch, played teenage Jeffrey in the movie, and his co-star, Alex Wolff, shared the details of the disturbing experience they had on the property of Jeffrey's childhood home. Wolff states, and I quote, "We were feeling sick to our stomachs, nauseous. I was feeling angry because I was feeling so bad, and I got out of the car and I said, you know what? Fuck Jeffrey Dahmer. What a piece of shit. Just fuck him. This whole movie I've tried to empathize, to be there for him, but fuck Jeffrey Dahmer." Per Wolff's recounting, at the exact moment he concluded that sentence, all electricity in the house, even the backup generators, went out, leaving the home engulfed in total darkness. Wolff, feeling thoroughly unnerved, states that he shouted an apology immediately afterwards, but that the damage was already done. Speaking of events later that night, He states, "The whole night I was waking up in sweats, feeling like I was being haunted. I don't know what it was. I was feeling really weird." On a personal note, there's one more thing I want to say before wrapping up this video. Serial killers are often glorified in the media, living on through the words of many for years after their physical deaths. However, their victims are often little more than an afterthought. After all, how many of Ted Bundy's or Jeffrey Dahmer's victims can you name off the top of your head? It's okay to feel an interest in serial killers, as morbid interests are actually quite normal. But while engrossing yourself in serial killer lore, please be sure to also keep in mind the countless innocent young victims and their devastated families, as they deserve to be remembered. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good day.